Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at 3 board games, those games being Jorvik by Stefan Feld, we have Sierra West by Johnny Pack, and finally we have Elysium by Brett Gilbert and Matthew Dunstan. Now I would consider these games as Euros, but perhaps there could be an argument calling Elysium more of a card game than a Euro. Before I share my thoughts on these games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in my show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. So let's start with my least favourite and then work our way up. So we're going to start with Sierra West here. This is a 1 to 4 player game, takes around 40 to 60 minutes to play. Now this is a resource management style game, as you are managing this hand of cards. In each round, you are going to slot 3 cards into your personal player board, which will show certain icons on each of these tracks. You have these 2 meeples, which are going to be moving from left to right, activating these different icons as you go, and you can do that at any pacing you like. Now they're going to give you resources, they're going to give you movement points to climb this mountain and collect new cards or better cards for your deck. They're going to let you move along this track here to increase your endgame scoring multipliers in relation to a separate track, and so on. It's all about the order in which you activate things to make sure you have the right resources at the right times. Now you can also collect these tiles, which will increase your engine or your ability to do different things. And I quite like this decision space of you are not able to activate these tiles unless you have somebody sat on them, which means that you cannot actually use the the icons going from left to right. So you can basically sit them here and then commit them to the track, but you can never go back on yourself. So it's all about that pacing and the order in which you are doing things. Now for me, this game felt a little bit too forgiving, because it seems like no matter what you did, you always had the right resources at the right time. And I didn't really feel like I had to stress myself too much in order to optimize each of my turns. Because what you're doing is when you get to the end, if you have the right resources, you can cash them in and get quite a strong bonus, such as get climbing tracks, etc. Now the game is modular, and I'll be transparent, I haven't tried them all, but the ones I have tried, it kind of always harks back to that main mechanism, which I like in theory. I do really like that, again, that tempo in which you're doing things, but I just didn't find the decision space too enticing or meaty enough to satisfy me. So yeah, I never really felt like I was making big choices, and the game was almost playing me, and the decisions were fairly obvious, despite being a cool mechanism. It looks nice when it's on the table, some good table presence there with a big card mountain, but yeah, ultimately I thought the game was quite forgettable, and I didn't really feel I wanted to play it any more than what I did, because I felt like I'd seen everything really, and it just didn't utilise that cool mechanism as much as it could have, because it's a really cool idea, slotting those cards in, covering up some symbols to reveal other ones. Some of these symbols are punishing, so you need to have resources at the right time or suffer, a bit of a punishment. Yeah, despite those cool things going on, the game itself was just nothing I was kind of looking for, and yeah, it didn't really do it for me. So I can't really recommend this one. That is Sierra West. So let's move on to Elysium. So Elysium is, as you can see, a rather beautiful looking game. This one accommodates 2 to 4 players and takes around an hour to play, at least according to the box. The games I've played have been a bit quicker than that. But this is a card drafting game and a bit of an engine builder, as you are acquiring these cards from different decks. So this game is completely variable. I think there's something like 8 decks or something in the box, and you only use 5 of them each time. So you've got some variability there. Some of the decks are a bit more aggressive than others. Some are a bit more kind of combo-rific, this kind of stuff. So you can really tailor the gameplay depending on your personal tastes for some variability and some replayability. Now, the drafting system in this game is actually quite cool, as you have these coloured pillars here, and as long as you have them in front of you on your player board, you can draft cards with those matching symbols on them. So you can see here, for this God of War card, I would need to have the yellow pillar and the red pillar on my sheet here, and if I had that, I would be eligible to take it into my display. But as soon as I take a card, I have to relinquish one of these and basically take them off, meaning that I now have fewer options to draft, and those pillars don't even have to match the ones that I've just used to draft. So you can see, like, if you've got a ton of cards with, say, the yellow symbol on them, then you might want to hold on to that one for the longest. But not only is there an urgency to get to the best cards, there's also a really important factor when it comes to drafting these initiative tiles, which will break turn order, but it'll also determine how many cards you can transfer from your engine to your Elysium, which is essentially your scoring pile. So this game is a bit of a plate spinning exercise between utilizing the abilities of these cards for as long as possible, with the intention of trying to transfer it into your Elysium to make it eligible for scoring. Because again, if you're using these powers, they are not going to score you anything. And as soon as you transfer them, then the powers are going to be basically nullified, but they are now secured for scoring. And what you're trying to do is you are trying to create sets of the same number in all the different suits. And you're also trying to collect a number 1, 2, and 3 card in each of the different suits. So you have kind of 2 different ways to score points there. And there's some bonuses as well for doing things quicker by getting these bonus tiles. So you are juggling quite a few things here. So I do like the way that works. I think it's generally a cool mechanism, and this game puts you under a lot of pressure to transfer it from your display into your Elysium, because the rounds go by pretty rapidly in this game. And if you're neglecting the correct initiative tiles that you want, then you can find yourself quickly running out of options to transfer the cards. So you might have great powers here, but you just haven't got enough time in order to transfer them. And there are, of course, tons of things that these cards do, such as generating you points, giving you bonus points, letting you transfer more cards, giving you points based on the different sets. So all the kind of things you'd expect when it comes to synergizing cards. So I generally like everything about this game. The only thing maybe I wasn't so sure on was that all the different suits or the different decks feel relatively similar. Yes, there are a few twists on them. You know, as I said, some are a bit more confrontational, some are a bit more interactive, that kind of thing. But the game generally felt similar each time. I did like that rating to get to the different sets of the bonus points. I like the pressure, the artwork is amazing, the little twist on the drafting is really solid, and yeah, generally this is a very well-rounded game. Now, what I generally found as well is that because most of the cards are pretty good anyway, you'd find yourself just going for the actual cards you need rather than the abilities. So, for example, if you're collecting 3s and you're missing the black 3, you're just going to draft the black 3 regardless of what the colour was, and hopefully the power will suit you as well. That's what I personally found. Again, maybe I'm not playing optimally, but yeah, that's just the direction I took and what my opponents took as well, and it seemed to serve us quite well. But all in all, I think this is a very solid game. Again, I love that idea of having how long do I want to utilise these powers before I give up on them and secure them as banked points. Now, I've seen that used in quite a few games before, games such as Tyrants of the Underdark, the Valley of Kings. Those are more kind of deck builder games, but I've also seen it in Kokopelli, which is a Stefan Feld game, where again you want to utilise his powers as much as possible before securing those points. And to be honest, I think I slightly prefer Kokopelli to this one, because I think it's a little bit smoother and I find the actual powers a little bit more interesting. Now, I don't want that to sound like a slight on this one, because I can certainly see why, if you like your kind of combo-tastic games, a bit of engine builder with some cool card play, then I'm pretty sure you'd like this one. You know, you've got ongoing powers, you've got powers that you can tap each round, you've got one kind of use per game powers, all these different things, and it's all about trying to trigger them at the right time. And I love the way that the timing really does come into play with this one. So this is, I would say, it's a near miss for me. I think objectively I can praise it and think that a lot of people would enjoy it, but I can't really see myself coming back to it much more. And if I wanted to play a game like this, again, I'd probably slightly lean towards Kokopelli. And the final game I'm talking about today is by far my favourite. This is Jorvik by Stefan Feld. Now, this is a 2 to 5 player game that takes probably 60 to 90 minutes to play, depending on how many people you are playing with. Now this is actually a bidding style game, as you are, again, building an engine of cards, but the way you acquire these cards in this game, for me, is so fascinating, and I love the bidding mechanism in this game, as you are basically putting out a whole new display of cards each round, and these cards do a ton of different things, which we'll touch on shortly. But basically, the better the cards are, the more expensive they're going to be by default, because what you're going to do on your turn is you're going to place your meeples in a queuing system next to the cards that you want. And the longer the queue, you have to pay an equal amount of coins equal to the number of people in that queue, but you refuse that card from the start of the queue to the back of the queue. So if there's, say, 5 people in the queue and you're first in line, you can pay 5 coins to get that card. But then if you don't want to pay that much, you can pass. It'll fall to the next person in the queue and they can pay 4 coins and then 3 coins and then 2 coins. So it has this kind of a push your luck chicken mechanism, which has so many wrinkles to the gameplay in terms of strategy, in terms of tactical maneuvering. Because if you know that your opponent really wants a card, you can kind of start stacking your people behind them, just running up the price. And you might not even have an intention to buy that card yourself, but it might be so cheap that you might be forced to buy it and utilize it. There's a ton of different strategies you can go for here. Like a lot of Steffenfeld games, this game works against you by these kind of these barbarians attacking, and you can build up a defense force, and if you have the best, then you get some more points. You have this kind of contract fulfillment system where you're collecting colored resource cubes to allocate them to these contracts that you're collecting. You have kind of conversion cards, you have straight up victory points cards, and all these different strategies are perfectly viable, and it's all about trying to find a good card at a good price. And there's even like this other auction mechanism that's going on at the same time through this reserving system, where if you claim a card, it will go into this another queue here. And again, the best cards will go to the front of the queue because people are going to reserve them. But depending on the amount of other reserved cards, it's going to cost an extra coin. So this game is one of the tightest games I've played in terms of money management. You get very few coins income each round, so you need to be making sure that you are weighting your bids exactly right and not overspending, because if you don't end up acquiring cards, you're going to fall behind, of course. But if you're spending too much money, then you're going to be left with the dregs and just not have enough kind of cash in the bank to get what you want. The game does maybe go on a little bit longer than I would like, but to be fair, I have most recently played this at 5 players. Works perfectly fine at that, but be prepared for it to maybe drag on maybe a little bit beyond that 90-minute mark. But 3 to 4 players, this one works like a dream. It scales well from that. I don't want to not recommend it at 5 because it does work really well at 5, but again, it does take a little bit longer. Again, tons of strategies to go down. That queuing system is amazing. And there really isn't much I dislike about this game at all. So, I have a lot of auction and bidding games in my collection, and only one game I've seen before using that queuing system, that kind of a chicken mechanism before, and that game is Spirium, which happens to be another game that I love. So both times I've seen that mechanism, I've seen it used to a very high standard, and I absolutely love it. I think it's so cool, and it does feel extremely tense. Turning on, shall I gamble and hope that my opponent won't pay that coin so that I can get it for 1 cheaper? But of course, they're going to get a first refusal to do it. So this one is not considered one of the best Steffenfeld games, but I actually think it's a very strong one. And that's saying a lot for me because I generally like all of his games. It feels slightly different, but it definitely does have that Steffenfeld flair to it. I'm completely in love with Jorvik. So this one's definitely going to get a commendation from me, and I highly recommend it. So there we go, that concludes the video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. 3 different opinions here. Sierra West, I'd give a hard pass. Elysium, soft recommendation to the right person, and Jorvik, a straight up recommendation. But if you have found the video useful, then please do hit like and subscribe to my channel. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.